In a quiet countryside village, there lived a girl named Emma. She was hardworking, kind, and quietly beautiful. But in that small town, people believed beauty belonged only to those who wore expensive clothes. Emma had none, so most people barely noticed her. What they didn't know was that one day, the same girl they ignored would return with a story no one in the village would ever forget. Make sure you stay until the end because you won't want to miss what really happens. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next one. Also, we're curious. What part of the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Emma grew up in a small wooden house surrounded by rice fields and coconut trees. Her father was a farmer who worked from sunrise until sunset. Her mother stayed at home, cooking meals and helping neighbors whenever they needed assistance. Life was never easy for the family. Some seasons brought a good harvest. Other times, the crops barely provided enough to survive. Emma understood their struggles. She studied hard in school, hoping that one day she could change their future. But being poor in a small town meant people often judged you before even knowing you. Other girls wore bright dresses and stylish shoes. Emma wore simple clothes that had been mended many times. While boys admired the girls who looked wealthy and fashionable, Emma quietly walked through the school unnoticed. Yet those who truly knew her saw something different. Emma was kind, intelligent, and determined. One afternoon, a black car stopped in front of their small house. It was the first time such an expensive vehicle had ever been seen in their village. A man wearing a formal suit stepped out. He introduced himself as a lawyer. Emma and her parents sat nervously as the man placed several documents on the table. The news he delivered shattered their world. According to legal records, the land Emma's family had been farming for years did not belong to them. It was owned by a wealthy businessman from the city. Emma's father stared at the papers in disbelief. "That land has been ours for generations," he whispered. But without money to hire a lawyer, they had no way to fight the case. Within weeks, the land was taken from them. Emma watched her father silently place his farming tools in the corner of their house. For the first time in her life, she saw tears in his eyes. That moment changed everything. Emma knew she had to help her family. With only a small bag of clothes and a heart full of determination, she left for the city to search for work. The city felt enormous and overwhelming. Tall buildings blocked the sky. Cars rushed past constantly, and thousands of strangers hurried along the streets. After weeks of searching, Emma finally found a job as a waitress in an elegant restaurant. It was the most luxurious place she had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the dining hall. Soft music played in the background. Wealthy customers filled the tables every night. Emma worked harder than anyone else. She greeted every guest politely, remembered their favorite dishes, and always served them with a warm smile. One of the restaurant's regular customers began noticing her. He was an older man who often sat quietly at the same table near the corner of the restaurant. He dressed simply and spoke very little. Most evenings he ate alone and spent his time observing the people around him. Unlike many other guests who demanded attention, he was calm and polite. Over time, he began making small conversations with Emma whenever she served his table. He asked about her day. Sometimes he joked about the food. Other times, he simply thanked her for the service. One evening, while Emma was placing his order on the table, he asked a question that surprised her. "Why aren't you in college?" Emma hesitated before answering. "My family cannot afford it," she said quietly. The man studied her face for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. "I could help you with that." Emma blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. The man leaned back slightly and smiled. I can pay for your college. Emma stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. What would I need to do? She asked cautiously. Just help clean our house on weekends, he replied. Laundry, simple chores. Emma felt a wave of uncertainty. Why would a stranger make such an offer? Was he simply being kind, or was there something else behind it? For several days, Emma could not stop thinking about it. Part of her felt afraid, but another part reminded her of her father's tired face, her mother's quiet sacrifices, her dream of going to college. In the end, Emma decided to take the risk. The following weekend, the man gave Emma the address of his house. When she arrived, she froze in shock. The house was enormous. Beautiful gardens surrounded the property. Tall gates stood at the entrance. Emma suddenly realized something. The man she thought was an ordinary customer was actually incredibly wealthy. She felt nervous as she walked inside. The man's wife was friendly and welcoming, but sometimes Emma still felt uneasy. Occasionally, she noticed the man watching her while she worked. Not in an obvious way, just quiet glances that made her wonder. Once, after finishing her chores, the man handed her an envelope. Emma looked inside and felt surprised. The money was far more than what they had agreed. Sir, this is too much, she said. The man waved his hand casually. You work hard, he replied. Still, Emma could not help but feel nervous. Was he being generous or expecting something in return? Emma used the money carefully. She paid for school expenses, and every month she sent part of her earnings back to her parents in the village. Her parents were always deeply grateful. Sometimes the man joked with her. One afternoon during tea, he smiled and said, You should marry my son John. Emma almost dropped the teacup she was holding. Sir, that would be impossible, she said nervously. How could someone like me marry a rich man's son? The man's wife laughed gently. Our son John is studying law in the United States, she explained. He's responsible, kind, and hardworking. Emma assumed they were simply joking. She laughed politely, never imagining those words might mean something real. Meanwhile, something remarkable was happening back in Emma's village. One afternoon, a young lawyer arrived at her parents' house. He brought surprising news. After reviewing the case carefully, the court discovered that the wealthy businessman who took their land had done so illegally. Emma's family had always been the rightful owners. Not only did they regain their land, they also received financial compensation. Emma's parents could hardly believe it. The young lawyer simply smiled. Justice sometimes takes time, he said, but it always finds its way. Several years later, a luxurious black car slowly entered Emma's small village. People gathered curiously around the road. Cars like that were rarely seen there. The windows were dark, hiding the passengers inside. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. A beautiful woman wearing elegant clothes stepped out. At first, the villagers didn't recognize her. Then someone gasped. That's Emma. She looked different now, confident, graceful. Moments later, another door opened. A well-dressed young man stepped out. The villagers were stunned. The young man was the same lawyer who helped her parents reclaim their land. Emma smiled warmly at the curious villagers. This is my husband, John, she said proudly. John smiled kindly at everyone. The girl who once walked quietly through the village unnoticed had returned as someone no one could ignore, not because of wealth, not because of success, but because she never gave up when life was at its hardest. And sometimes, the quiet girl everyone overlooks is the one destined to rise the highest.